How does sickle cell disease kill a person? Prodigy, one half of the rap and hip-hop duo Mobb Deep, died Tuesday in Las Vegas at the age of 42 after being hospitalized for complications related to sickle cell anemia. Mobb Deep is widely considered to be one of the most successful acts of all time, having released 8 albums between 1993 and 2014. Prodigy, born Albert Johnson, had suffered from sickle cell anemia since birth. Sickle cell disease is a group of inherited red blood cell disorders. 2 hemoglobin S genes need to be inherited, one from each parent, in order to trigger sickle cell disease. If both parents have the sickle cell trait, a child has a 50% chance of also inheriting the sickle cell trait, a 25% chance of being disease-free, as well as a 25% chance of inheriting the sickle cell disease. Hemoglobin is a protein that carries oxygen in red blood cells. Red blood cells that contain normal hemoglobin are disc-shaped, whereas sickle cell hemoglobin form long and inflexible chains. Normal red blood cells are flexible and can pass through both large and small blood vessels. Sickled red blood cells can stick to vessel walls, which can cause a blockage that stops oxygen delivery. Normal red blood cells can live up to 120 days. When the number of red blood cells decreases, the kidneys release erythropoietin hormones that stimulate bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. Sickled blood cells can only last up to 20 days due to their inflexible nature. The body of someone suffering from the condition often can't keep up with the fast pace of decreasing red blood cells, thus causing the person to suffer anemia. Anemia causes various organ damage over time, affecting the brain, heart, spleen, lungs, and kidneys, as well as the skin and bones. According to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, most people with sickle cell disease are of African ancestry. About 1 in 13 African American babies is born with the sickle cell trait, and 1 in 365 black children is born with sickle cell disease. Say no to safe spaces on YouTube. Support TomoNews at patreon.com/TomoNews. The human body is a fragile thing. Fresh Ebola outbreak in Congo kills 3. The World Health Organization has confirmed there was a new Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo over the weekend. This comes a year after the previous epidemic in West Africa killed 11,000 people. The outbreak was declared in the town of Aketi, near the border with the Central African Republic. Of the 19 suspected and confirmed cases, 3 people have died. The first case occurred on April 22nd, when a 45-year-old man died after taking a taxi to a hospital. The driver of the taxi later fell ill and also died. A third person who cared for the 45-year-old man also became ill and died. An experimental Ebola vaccine might be used to control the outbreak. The vaccine replaces a gene from the harmless vesicular stomatitis virus with a gene encoded with a surface protein of the Ebola virus. The vaccine produces an immune response in humans. Some 300,000 emergency doses of the vaccine are available. Health officials in the Congo are trying to contact 125 people who have potential links to the identified cases. WHO officials have not yet decided whether or not to use the experimental Ebola vaccines to contain the outbreak. Kissing bug disease may cause more deaths than previously thought. A new study has found that Chagas disease may have been underreported as a cause of death. The study, conducted by researchers in Brazil, followed subjects for up to 14 years. Those with Chagas were 2 to 3 times more likely to die and 17 times more likely to develop cardiac disease. Chagas disease is transmitted by the triatomine bug, which is called the kissing bug because it bites sleeping humans near the eyes and lips. Kissing bugs defecate in or near the broken skin when they feed, transferring the Trypanosoma cruzi parasite into the bloodstream. Chagas causes flu-like symptoms that subside after a few months, but it can reappear years or decades later as heart disease. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimate that there are 300,000 cases of Chagas disease in the U.S. Most of these cases were contracted in other countries. The authors of the study found that Chagas was not reported as a cause of death in 42% of people in the study who died from cardiac disease, suggesting it has been underreported as a cause of death. Chagas has been identified by the CDC as one of 5 neglected parasitic infections that require public health action. Kissing bugs have been reported in 28 U.S. states, mostly in the South. Experts warn about the spread of the Powassan virus. Health experts are warning about the potential increase in the spread of a disease called the Powassan virus this summer. Warmer winters have reportedly increased the population of ticks, which spread the disease. The Powassan virus is a potentially life-threatening virus transmitted by ticks, including the deer tick. The virus can infect everyone, including children, teenagers, middle-aged people, and the elderly. Although most people will not develop symptoms, the virus kills about 15% of those who do. Meanwhile, some 50% of survivors will suffer long-term neurological damage. Others will experience symptoms similar to those of the flu, including fevers and headaches. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there are no vaccines to prevent transmission of the virus or medications to cure it. Say no to safe spaces on YouTube. Support TomoNews at patreon.com/TomoNews.
Dengue fever, anyone? FDA finds 327 more vials of contagious viruses in the same storage room they found smallpox last week. A week after 6 vials of smallpox viruses were found in the U.S.'s National Institutes of Health campus, FDA officials confirmed that more than 300 vials of assorted viruses have been discovered in the same storage room. According to reports, the viruses were likely placed there between 1946 and 1964, well before the NIH occupied the building in 1972. Oops, guess the new building manager never got the memo. The vials were found in the 3rd-floor storage room in Building 29A in the NIH campus. A total of 327 vials were found in 12 boxes containing dengue, influenza, Q fever, and rickettsia viruses. Investigators have destroyed 32 vials on the NIH facility, which contained samples of non-contagious specimens. 279 vials of assorted viruses were sent to Homeland Security's National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasures Center in Fort Detrick, Maryland. And 16 unlabeled vials have been shipped to the Centers of Disease Control in Atlanta. Prior to the discovery of these vials, only 2 labs in the world, one at CDC and the other near Novosibirsk, Russia, were supposed to store smallpox samples. The FDA also confirmed that out of the 6 vials of smallpox virus discovered last week, at least 2 contained virus samples that were still alive. Meaning even though smallpox was eradicated in 1980, people exposed to the virus sample could potentially develop the debilitating disease. Authorities are now combing through FDA labs around the country to ensure that no other stray virus samples exist.